Welcome to the Purple Positivity Podcast for July the 23rd, 2018. I am your host, the amazingly adorable Rebecca Thistle, podcasting to you live-ish from my new used desk in my apartment, which I call Jeffrey Thistlework. Yes. So, I really had no clue what I was going to talk about on this show. My brain is just hazy. So I started scrolling around on Twitter, and as is the case every Monday, trending was hashtag Monday Motivation. So I was like, all right, come on, let's see what we got going on here. And I saw this tweet, and I really wish that I could remember the username and give this person a shout out, because this really got me thinking. And I can't even remember exactly what the tweet said. My brain is like out of it. But it's something to the effect of, if Nelson Mandela had died at 71, he would have died a prisoner or a criminal. And if Maya Angelou had died at 21, she would have died a prostitute or something like that, a pregnant prostitute. If, and it listed off a few people who made mistakes in their past. And this culminated in the statement of you're not defined by your past mistakes, just keep going, or something to that effect. I sent it to all caps someone, so because I wanted him to see it, and then I went, maybe I'll talk about this on my podcast, and I didn't think to memorize the damn thing. Then again, like I don't even know if I could memorize it, because I'm in just such a weird place mentally right now. But I do want to talk about it because, our mistakes don't define us. My mistakes don't define me. I define who my mistakes turn me into. That is bad grammar, by the way. I define the person that evolves from those mistakes. That's what I define. And and this is something that I've told all caps someone is, what you've done in the past is nothing compared to what you're doing now. And I mean, even like from the get-go, when we first started talking, he told me some things about his life, just very vaguely, and like it was going to scare me off. And we were doing this over text, and I sent him a message back, and I said, look, your past to me is nothing more or less than expositional information meant to give context to current events. What is expositional information, Becca? That's like if you're reading a book or you're watching a show or whatever, and that's like the flashback, that's like you saw it in like Lost all the time, where there was always the flashback for one of the characters, and it gave context to why they were in the situation they were in, or why this one object that was lost in the wreck was so precious to them, or why they feel bound and determined to, like you saw this a lot with Jack's character, who's always bound and determined to, save everybody. Oh man. But that's expositional information. Those flashbacks, that's considered expositional information. And that expositional information, not necessarily useless. And it's not always comforting. But it doesn't have to define a person. I went on to say to all caps someone, I don't care what you did in your past. I care what you're doing now. And he's not perfect. I think sometimes he thinks. Not all the time. Sometimes he thinks that I think that he's perfect. I know he's not perfect. Oh my gosh. That being said, if I didn't see genuine effort on his part to be better than he was before, I wouldn't still be talking to him. I actually spent half the weekend on the phone with him. It was the most amazing thing in the world to me. Because he'd call me up. Like yesterday alone, he called me up at like 8:30 in the morning my time, which is about 7. It was about like 9 o'clock in the morning my time, so that would have been about 8 a.m. his time. Anyways, he calls me up, and and he tells me some things that just happened to him that's kind of got him irritated. But then after that, we just sat there, kind of randomly talking, and half the time, it was just like, it was almost like we were just listening to each other breathe. Because in this really difficult time, I think we're being each other's life preservers. I can't speak for him. I can only speak for me, but just having him there on the phone sometimes is all that stands between me and a total nervous breakdown. And actually, it was either Friday or Saturday night. I, out of nowhere, just got overwhelmed with emotions, and I started crying and breaking down. Just it was so melodramatic. Like, I'd just gotten out of the tub, and I was trying to track down my jammies, and so I'm naked and I'm cold. I'm covered, like I've got my towel wrapped around me, and all these emotions just hit me all at once, and I started crying, and I just basically curled into a ball on the floor and sobbed until I couldn't breathe. And then I found my jammies, and I got dressed, and I went on with my day. And so I was telling him about this the next day. Like I said, this happened either Friday night or Saturday night. So I was either telling him this Saturday or Sunday. And he says to me, "Why didn't you call me?" I said, I didn't know that was an option. I said, "No, it's always an option. Call me." So when a similar situation came up last night, I called him. He didn't answer, but he called me back. And he said, "Is everything okay?" So I'd left him a voicemail. I was very audibly upset. I said, "Hey, it's just me. Call me back when you get a chance. Bye." And I hung up. But I was very audibly upset. He called me about an hour or so later. He goes, "Hey, what's going on?" And I told him what had me upset in that moment. I cried a little bit, and he stayed on the phone with me. It was great. But anyways, the point that I'm trying to make, and I just totally got off topic. I told you my brain is not working very well this morning. Who he used to be is who he used to be. I care about what he's doing now. And is what he's doing now perfect? That, first of all, that's not for me to judge. I'm sure some of the choices he's making now, he's going to regret later. Because we all make choices that we regret later. Even when they are the right choices in that moment. That being said, the choices he's making now are vastly different from the choices he made in the past. And just because the things that are going on right now aren't necessarily the most admirable or inspiring, doesn't mean that that's the end of our story. But we have the power to change our story. Good news, bad news, right? Good news, we have that power. Bad news, we have that power. We got to flip the narrative on ourselves. That's terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. But we're not defined by our mistakes in the past. As much as everybody else wants to define us that way. We're not defined that way. We get to define ourselves. We get to define what those mistakes mean. We get to define whether or not they're actually considered mistakes. I try not to think of my past as being full of mistakes. I like to think of my past as being full of lessons that I learned. Call back to Friday's episode, I guess it was. We get to define who we are, what our mistakes actually mean, whether or not they're actually mistakes. We get to define that. And that's our choice. And the rest of the world may want to define it a different way. That's their problem. Because all that matters is what we ourselves think. I'm in a situation right now where I'm not ready to give the details of it, but I'm in a situation right now where once I do give the details of it,